Today on TimesCast, exclusive interviews with representatives of the EU, the Senate, and Clinton Global Initiative. Hi, it's Jonathan Bleiberg here with the New York Times. I'm at the EU Parliament building with Maurice Farber, a representative from Estonia. Now, Mr. Farber, how do you plan to respond to the Greek debt crisis?
So basically in committee we've discussed several options. While we all agree that the Greeks need to implement austerity measures in order to cut their ballooning deficit, we also have to account for the vital social services that Greek citizens need in order to maintain a relatively high standard of living. Without these social services, it's pretty much guaranteed that social or civil unrest will occur in Greece. So in order to prevent this, the Republic of Estonia proposes that we create a subsidiary budget agreed to between the European Central Bank and the Greek government that will include vital social services such as healthcare, public education, and subsistence welfare. These services will be paid for by European Central Bank bonds issued with very low interest rates because they're backed by the full faith of nations with budgetary surpluses in the European Union, such as Germany, the United Kingdom, France, and the Benelux nations. These will attract investors and will help Greece pay for these social services so as not to cause unrest. This will allow Greece to focus on repaying its high-interest loans over the next 10 years, in addition to cutting unnecessary things from its budget, such as extremely high military expenditure and expenditures on telecommunications and transportation. The hope is that after a short period of time, when loans are repaid and the Greek economy is on the route to recovery, Greece will reassume the cost of these social services and will pay back the European Central Bank at no additional interest.
Now, Mr. Farber, there's been a lot of talk in the press lately about the possibility of a Greek exit from the Eurozone. Has there been a lot of talk in this committee, or is this pretty much off the table at this point?
Yes, there has in fact been talk about Greece's leaving the Eurozone committee, but there's been almost unanimous consensus that Greece will not be asked to leave because that could cause an impending economic disaster. The thing is that if Greece were to leave the euro and reassume the drachma as its national currency, this would cause a run on the banks in Greece. The Greek central bank would collapse with no money, and the Greek government's slim line of credit would dwindle to zero, causing the entire nation, despite a devalued currency, to completely falter. This would also arise, speculation would also arise as to which would be the next European Union nation to exit the Eurozone, especially given the economic turmoil in Italy, Spain, and Portugal. These would cause subsequent runs on banks in those nations, and their central banks would collapse, thereby perhaps allowing the European Central Bank system to implode and destroying the European Union as we know it. So the answer is no, Greece will not be asked to leave the Eurozone. Greece will remain as a member of the Eurozone, and we will move forward with the austerity measures and bond package as discussed.
Mr. Farber, thank you for your time. Hi, it's Jonathan Bleiberg here for the New York Times. We're at Capitol Hill with Representative Rosalhita. I'm going to ask her a few questions about what's been going on in the Joint House Committee. Now, Representative Rosalhita, I've heard a number of things about cybersecurity initiatives that have been going on in this Joint House Committee. Could you tell me about this?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So we've really come to a realization, and we're acting on that realization. The realization that we've come to is that America is fundamentally insecure when Chinese corporations and the Chinese government are able to access American data. And that has two key consequences. The first is that American corporations are put at a competitive disadvantage. The director of the NSA recently called this the greatest transfer of wealth in human history. And that's a clear loss for the United States. The second sub-issue of this, is that the United States' security is threatened when China can basically log onto its computers and access plans for the F-35 fighter bomb. We are threatened when China can log onto its computers and access important information like where our submarines are off their coast. They can do this by hacking into our computer networks, and that's another problem. So it's an economic problem, but it's also a security problem. And the way we're looking at this is it's a threefold solution. The first issue, the first prong of this approach is short-term defense mechanisms. We're working to educate folks at the Department of Defense, at the Department of Energy, the Department of Homeland Security, to make sure that they're not doing simple things like keeping their computers on the internet when they ought not be on the internet so that China can access this material. We're doing simple things like making sure, for example, that China can't access American infrastructure because it's been protected by up-to-date antivirus programs. So it's a number of simple defense things that make sure American critical infrastructure is protected, that make sure American military computers are protected, and that make sure that American small businesses can have the protection that they need to be secure. That's the first prong. The second prong of the approach is regulating America's offensive capabilities, and that really takes two issues. The first is making sure that China and other nations know what will trigger a response. It's letting them know that when they spy on us, we will spy on them. When they attack our power plants, they will attack ours. They can't get away with cyber attacks and not have retaliation. That's not going to happen. And the second thing we do, though, is reaffirm that we're not looking for war. We're not looking for peace. So we're going to negotiate with China and with other nations. The second thing that we're doing is making sure that American offensive capabilities are clear and are secure. And that's taking two major steps. The first of those is making it clear that cyber attacks aren't going to go without retaliation. If China spies on us, we're going to spy on them. If they attack our military, we're going to attack theirs. And if they spy on our critical infrastructure, we're going to do the same. Mutually assured destruction. If they are going to harm us, they are going to be punished for that. But the second issue is that America is looking for peace. And in consequence, we're going to be working with China and with other nations to make sure, for example, that cyber weapons, whenever possible, are targeted at the military and not at primarily civilian issues like power plants. We're going to be working with China to make sure that when they do attack, it's going to be infrequent and it will be easily resolvable. In short, we're going to make sure that if there is a cybersecurity mess, it will be relatively easy to clean up. And the third part of this three-pronged approach is making sure that in the long term, it is not in China's interest to pursue cyber attacks. So, for example, any corporation or any group from receiving information obtained illicitly from the Chinese government isn't going to be able to do business in the United States. Any group that's spying on U.S. corporations is going to be liable for the consequences of their actions. They're going to have to pay fines or face terms of imprisonment. Their leaders are going to have to face terms of imprisonment if they violate the laws of the United States, if they are spying on American corporations. And we're going to make sure, again, that American small businesses are protected. We're going to make sure that American small businesses are protected by increasing tariffs on Chinese-made goods which have benefited from Chinese cyber espionage. Because it's not fair when American companies are honest and Chinese companies cheat. And when Chinese companies cheat, it puts American companies at a competitive disadvantage that they ought not face. As a result, when we raise tariffs on these Chinese companies, we're effectively leveling the playing field for American groups.
Now on to a different topic. I've heard a number of reports about a crisis going on in Kashmir. What exactly is the situation there, and what has the United States been doing about it?
That's an excellent question, and frankly, we're not entirely sure yet. It would appear that there was a terrorist attack in India from an Al-Qaeda affiliate, which is also loosely affiliated with Pakistan. Around the same time, there was an Indian response. India claims in error that a helicopter shot at and killed several Pakistani civilians in the Kashmir region. Pakistan claims that this was retaliatory in response to the terrorist attack. Frankly, we're not entirely certain whose account is correct. It seems like we're beyond that now. The long and short of it is America at first pursued a policy of non-intervention. We said both sides, we want peace, we're not going to help either side. We want talks, we're going to host talks. Unfortunately, both of those groups rejected this option. And there's currently some fighting going on in the Kashmir region. India, we believe, launched a strike against Pakistani positions, and Pakistan launched a counter-strike. In addition, Pakistan Pakistan and India have both ceased their contributions to the war on terror, which is especially worrying in the case of Pakistan because most of our troops actually go through Pakistan to enter into Afghanistan. And Congress is still deliberating on what to do. We could not reach a consensus, unfortunately, in the first committee session regarding this crisis as to whether we should back India, whether we should back Pakistan, whether we should stay neutral. Staying neutral appears to be the default option right now. I think that there is a solid majority of the committee looking for some kind of action to assist India, but frankly we're not entirely sure what that action would be, what kind of action would command the 2/3 of the House and Senate necessary to take emergency action at this time. So we're watching, we're waiting, we're hoping, and we're really praying that this situation is resolved safely.
Now, Representative Rosalhita, there have been a number of reports of Chinese intervention in this conflict. Can you confirm or deny those?
I will do the best I can to avoid disclosing classified information. It is my belief, it is the belief of the committee, that there is some form of Chinese intervention in the region. We do not believe that there are necessarily Chinese boots on the ground in the region. We don't believe that China is directly involved. We don't believe that China is necessarily even involved in the fighting at all, but we do know that they are actively backing Pakistan. They're giving Pakistan material, they're giving Pakistan money, and frankly this is a very concerning development for us because we want to keep this conflict as isolated as possible. We want to keep it in, a conflict between India and Pakistan, because a conflict between two countries is one thing, a conflict between 3 countries, 4 countries, 5 countries, soon you have a much bigger problem. So in short, we think that there is Chinese involvement. We think that that Chinese involvement is a needless escalation and complication of the conflict, and we strongly would urge China to do the right thing, do the moral thing, do the practical thing, do the safe thing, and withdraw from the Pakistani border immediately.
Representative Rosalhita, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Pleasure.